I want to call up a guy who is like the real estate Twitter OG, an 800-pound gorilla of the Los Angeles real estate private equity community, and actually like a personal idol of mine, Keith Wasserman of Gelt.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for.
Want me here?
Yeah, go ahead, sit down. All right, so I got a bunch of interesting questions to ask Keith because like I'm interested in them. But before I do that, I want to ask Keith to give us like just a quick like status update on what Gelt is today, because it's just a complete monster. And then what we're going to do is kind of go back and talk about some of the decisions that took Keith and his partners from buying fourplexes in Bakersfield to what we have today. So maybe you could start out by telling us what's going on with Gelt.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me, Moses, and excited to meet a lot of people IRL in real life. Know a lot of you from Twitter, so feel free to say hi to me afterwards. But so Gelt today, 2021. I'll talk about the current portfolio. We own around 6,000 apartment units, Denver and West. We own 600,000 square feet of self-storage with another 150,000 square feet in contract right now. And we're also building a few hundred units locally in the LA area. So portfolio is around $1.8 billion value. And yeah, that's like the current, what we're doing right now. Yeah.
That's perfect. So, and just to kind of give everyone a tiny bit more context, Keith got started in this business right around the same time I did, and roughly in the same place. And we're at like 200 million in assets under management, right? So the decisions that Keith made over the course of and his partners made over the last X number of years have been like objectively probably better than the decisions I've made. So I'm really interested to hear. This conference is really intended to be about growing one of these firms, and this is an example of what happens if you get it all right. So I want to get started by talking about first, like that initial deal that you guys did up there as a fourplex, I believe.
Yeah, 4 units in good old Bakersfield. We call it Bako Dice on a good day and Baker Tucky on a bad day.
And like, so you were like, I think roughly like right out of college at that point?
Yeah, I graduated from USC locally in 2007 and took a year off, really learned as much as I could about real estate, got my broker's license to learn the lingo, read as many books as I could. I wish I was on Twitter actively during the day. There wasn't really a retweet community, thanks to Moses nowadays. But yeah, I just try to absorb and learn as much as I could. But the real learning happened when we bought that first fourplex.
And were you guys scouring the MLS everywhere? Why that one?
Yeah, so my cousin Damien, actually, we're serial entrepreneurs. We were trying to figure out what to do, and we had a lot of ideas, and they didn't work out. And then Damien came to me, and he's like, my father's in Bakersfield, and he's there all week, and then on the weekends he comes back to Pasadena where he lives. And the market there, had a huge run up during 04, 05, 06 during the housing boom, and then the subsequent bust got hit really hard. And these prices of these buildings are around a quarter of what they were, but there's REOs galore. The rents have fallen, but not that much. So you should come out and see what my dad's doing, and maybe we could do something similar. So literally, Damien bought the first building, and it was a 4-unit building, 3911 Oregon Street. And yeah, man, it was pretty awesome. REO, bank owned. He picked it up for around 150 to 175,000. It previously sold for like 550,000. And he didn't have much. So what he did is he got an FHA loan, which we talk a lot about on Twitter, is an awesome way to get started, owner occupied, and he didn't even have the money for that. So he borrowed like $5,000 from a friend for the down payment, and he got a cash advance of $10,000 on his credit card to do the rehab. And that's literally like the first fourplex that started with Gelt, and that's how it started. Yeah.
So one of the things I want to point out, which I think is interesting, and kind of helped with your subsequent moves, is that your first property was not where you lived. Like that's I think one of the mistakes that we made is, in retrospect, is wanting to keep control over the real estate and therefore only wanting to do deals in LA where we could like personally oversee it. And so it's interesting to me that right away from the very beginning, you were willing to go into a market that wasn't, where you lived.
So a little disclaimer, owner occupied FHA, you got to live there. But Damien was a self-contractor, was able to move for his work. And, this was a long time ago. So he sort of skirted around. You know, we there's a gray area, right? So he
Everyone here is familiar with that.
I know this is being recorded and stuff, but he put all the utilities in his name. You couldn't. I don't think we could have bought an FHA deal locally with the values. I'm not sure exactly how the program works, but it incentivizes first-time home buyers and. We did what we needed to do to get started, and that's how we got started. You know?
Now, subsequently, was it more acquisitions in Bakersfield? And then I want to talk. So I want to talk about that, and then I think your next move was to Phoenix. Is that right?
Yeah. So Bakersfield fourplex he bought. I came in on the second fourplex, put the down payment. Third fourplex, we had my dad put the down payment, and then we had these like 3 fourplexes, and we're like, so how do we grow? And we spoke to a lot of mentors, and they're like, why don't you sell 49% of those buildings? And we marked it up because we created so much value. They were dilapidated bank-owned properties, boarded up, and we breathed new life into them, renovated them, leased them out, performing assets. So we sold 49% of that, and then used that money to buy another 3 or 4. And then we started buying a few more with some family friends. So the first year, all of 2009, we bought like 13 or 14 4-unit buildings all on the east side of Bakersfield, sort of a rougher part of town.
And were you guys managing them yourselves?
We started with outside management, and on the smaller side, it's generally hard to find good, reliable property management companies. So then we took it in-house, and that we found out was a really big mistake. My wife, who's somewhere in the audience, we were going up on the weekends, renting units. We don't really speak Spanish. We had Google Translate working for us. We had managers that weren't showing up. So it was definitely, we weren't the best people to do it. And eventually we sold those assets. We learned a lot of good lessons. I espouse on Twitter about just because something's cheap doesn't make it a good deal. I learned to buy up in better areas, and we quickly learned it takes the same amount of time and energy to buy a 4-unit building as a 40-unit building as a 400-unit building.
I still haven't learned that lesson, or maybe I just did, or I don't know. So the next step was Phoenix, right?
Yeah, Phoenix.
And let me ask, did you guys do a comprehensive research study of different secondary markets? LA, why Phoenix? What was that process like?
So Phoenix hit the radar because I'd been going to Phoenix my whole life. My grandparents lived there, and we saw it was decimated. Rents were down around 20% from peak to trough, and there was foreclosures everywhere. 100,000 people left the state because they had this huge immigration bill, and they were just bleeding from the housing bust. And it was more of a gut thing. Phoenix, 5th largest city in the United States. It's not going anywhere. Maybe temporarily had some major issues, but on a risk-reward thing, it's like, sure, it could have dropped a little lower, but it was like when things are depressed, that's the time to get greedy and charge in there. It was tough to raise money, though. People were scared and didn't have as much capital because maybe their stocks and real estate portfolios were down. So it was brutal raising money. I mean, it took us 6 months to raise money on a deal. We had to close with lines of credit, borrow money from friends, whatever we had to do.
But you guys were buying at ridiculously low per unit cost,
looking
right?
Back, it was looking back, it was ridiculous. But back then, that was the market, right? So we bought our first deal in Phoenix. We went in there to meet the brokers, and I was visiting my grandparents. It was 120 degrees out there. I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. They're like, who the fuck is this young kid, right? Like, what is he doing? They advised me the office was empty because people weren't doing deals. They were all depressed, the brokers, and we're like, these smiley, because I'm a very energetic, young guy, and we're talking about how we're buying buildings in Bakersfield, and they're like, okay, young guy, start with a little 30, 40 unit building, and then come back and talk to us. But we came in there, and my wife and I, Galena, we went and toured this 415 unit building that Aimco owned, big REIT, and on prime real estate on Camelback, right by the Biltmore Hotel. And the broker sort of dismissed us, young people. What the hell are they doing? They don't know anything. And that was the first deal we bought. It was 415 units, $16 million deal. We jumped from $4 or $5 million deals to that, and it took us 6 months to raise that capital.
So how did you? Let's talk about that. So that continued your tradition of kind of raising deal by deal. You guys never did a fund or whatever.
Always deal by deal. Yeah.
Deal by deal. So $16 million deal. What were you putting down? 6 or something?
Yeah, we raised $5.9 million of equity.
Okay, yeah. And did you I guess maybe let's talk for a second. Your father had some real estate experience in terms of syndicating.
So full
stuff,
disclaimer,
right?
my dad had a very successful law practice. I don't think he really enjoyed doing what he was doing. He was always a very, like me, businessman, entrepreneur. Grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and Jewish family, go be a doctor or a lawyer. So he did it, and. But yeah, he made more money probably investing in real estate. And my mom pretty much built a few buildings for the family and local strip center kind of stuff. And yeah, he said he's made more money on a few of these choice properties, like an industrial building, a strip center, an office building, local stuff, nothing huge. But over the last 20, 30 years, they've appreciated so much, and they fund their lifestyle, the cash flow. So I was never interested in law, but real estate always intrigued me, and yeah.
So sort of like the technology of raising money, like this was not something that was totally foreign to you.
Man,
Your family
we were
had done
driving up to Bakersfield, listening to Napoleon Hill Think or Grow Rich, and we're like, how the fuck are we going to raise our first $100,000? Like,
right.
You know, but we started with the low-hanging fruit. We started with family, friends. We started with clients, and then I brought my dad in as a partner. Once we bought all these fourplexes, because I couldn't qualify for larger loans. I didn't have the investor base. And we brought in another gentleman named Adrian Goldstein, who's been a mentor and friend, and he was a partner for many years. And he had the experience running larger multifamily properties for his father-in-law, but wanted to do more of his own stuff. And there was 5 of us in the beginning. It was me, Damien, my dad, Adrian, and there was another younger partner. But in the beginning, we had only between the 3 young guys a third ownership or something. We over time earned our ownership more and more, and now it's really family. Me, Damien, and my dad, a third.
I want to just highlight something there, which is, and this is a mistake that I think I've made as well. You were really not greedy. Right? Like you maybe long-term greedy,
but
not short-term greedy about trying.
I was living at home in my childhood room until I was 25. I mean, we weren't making money for many years, but that's what I had to sacrifice.
But being willing to give up a big chunk of the promote to get the deals done, kind of put you on that path.
Rather be a small part of something that's going to be huge than something small that's going to take forever and not really.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So, we're in Phoenix now. By the first deal, you had this bad experience of self-managing in Bakersfield, but now luckily you've got this, or maybe not luck, but by intention, you have this larger institutional property. How'd you go about selecting management and getting comfortable that these people were going to do a good job?
Yeah, we just, like Adrian knew a few real estate people in Phoenix, and we had them introduce us to 2 or 3 management companies that were local, and we picked one that was really just in that area. It wasn't a national one. They gave us a lot of attention, and they really helped us grow our business there. The name of the firm was Allison Shelton. Now it's called like Shelton Cook or something like this. But they were very hands-on with us, and we learned to really partner with our management companies. Later on, we sort of had them reduce fees, and we gave them pieces of the back end and really creative structures to really incentivize us. It's all about the management of these things, as Moses knows. He self-manages. So we wanted their best people, their best minds, and really incentivize them to crush it for us,
And so that relationship led to buying a whole bunch more stuff in Phoenix, right?
Yeah, Phoenix is our main market. That's all we bought. From 2010 to like 15, we bought maybe 2,500 units in Phoenix. And they were all like older. Like a lot of people miss this 415 unit because they were all studios in ones. They're like, oh, you got to buy 2s and 3s. But it was on 10 acres of land, prime land, cheap. Looking back, it was probably better just to scrape it and build a brand new building. But we were way undercapitalized on the project, and but we thought we were smart when we went and sold it for $27 million, and then it resold for $55 million. And that's we're worth $100 million, and I could retire probably. But, never going to retire, by the way. Yeah.
So you built up this portfolio in Phoenix through 2015, and then you guys had already started selling at that point. Or when did you start selling?
We started selling. The fourplexes went first because they were a pain in the ass.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Didn't really make money. Maybe a little bit. On one of them, we lost money. We come out of our own pocket and return the money to the investor. I always talk about that because we've never lost principal for investors. And that's sort of my ethos. And then I think we started selling Phoenix maybe in like 17 or so.
Got it. But in the meantime, you started buying other places.
Yeah, we started buying in Denver. That was our next market. Maybe in like years just blend. Maybe 5-6 years ago. And then Salt Lake City, Reno, expanded to Portland, Seattle, Albuquerque, and Southern California.
Now, talk to me about that expansion. Did you guys bring on board like an acquisitions team?
Yeah, so like the company was just like the 5 of us in the beginning, all partners kind of thing. But we brought on people where we had holes. So we brought on people that we taught the asset management, then taught the acquisitions, and we focused more on where we would move the needle. Like Damien oversaw all the major construction projects for many years, and I oversaw like the strategic vision and investor relations and broker relationships. And yeah, we just kept adding one person at a time where we needed it. And now it's like relatively small firm because we don't do property management. We're 23 people, but we would be hundreds if we did a property management. And that was by design. I didn't want to be in the property management business. Otherwise, I'd have hundreds of employees. It's a low margin business. It's good for like if you're all in one area, like Moses is, controlling your costs and really having a pulse on the market. But for us, it's just not practical. We're in so many states and markets.
That makes sense to me. Now, again, I want to draw out this notion of not being greedy, because this is something that like I've struggled with in building our GP business. It's when you own it, you have fee income or whatever coming in, and you need to make a decision like every month. Do I put that fee in my pocket, or do I hire someone to help me grow the business? And that's like a challenge that all small businesses have, right? Like you're going to fund growth from your own cash flow.
You got to delay that gratification, man. It's tough to do, but we did it from our first deal. We didn't even take the acquisition fee. We rolled it back into the deal. Thank God, because it went up 2-3 times, and then we exchanged it. I'm wearing my 1031 exchange shirt thanks to Joey Baum, our Twitter friend. I don't know if he's here, but
be careful that we're like people are not excited about the 1031 exchange right now. Okay, so you guys made the decision to staff up, taking money out of your own pocket. Was that like a contentious decision internally, or was everyone aligned about that?
I think everyone was aligned. I mean, we sort of did it gradually over time. It wasn't like, we overhired, and we just did it gradually over time, one person at a time, where we had holes and needed people. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. So these people that you're bringing, you told me that you train them up. Were these people coming in as like rank amateurs, like they didn't know anything, or were you bringing in acquisitions people who had done it for other companies?
So, yeah, our first few hires, literally one guy just started coming and didn't even I didn't even hire him. But George has been with us now like 8 years, and he's now a partner. And the fucking guy just hustles, and he's been a great asset. And I always say you get paid by the value you bring. Make yourself irreplaceable if you want to really, earn what you think you want to earn and stuff. But we had like another guy, one of my partners. Now we made him a partner. He started from the ground up. He maybe did some commercial brokerage for a little while, but very little experience, and he went to work at Barnes & Noble. But the guy was hungry as hell. So the early people were just like hungry and wanting to learn, but later on we started like hiring. It just took a lot of time to train, and we were a little further along. So, but yeah, even one of our last hires 5-6 years ago now, Josh was a former professional baseball player, and he never sat in an office, right? So didn't have any real estate experience other than investing with other groups, which he's really smart. He knows real estate. That's the way I park my money and stuff. So yeah, we had a lot of people that didn't have the experience, but nowadays we're hiring people with more experience, I'd say.
Got it. We've gone through a similar path, and I think a lot of people out here probably have lived that as well. Okay, so I want to now kind of talk about your switch. I mean, obviously you had the experience of starting to sell in 2017, like everyone who sold anything before today. You kind of regret that a little bit, right?
That's why I take antidepressants. All the buildings we sold back in 2017 that have doubled and tripled in value.
Sorry. So is that like was that really the genesis of the hold forever type thing that you guys are thinking about now, or was it like walk me through that mindset?
A few things. So we sold in the beginning days to return capital to investors to create the track record. Also, we didn't know that we could sort of take off our promote and let the investors keep rolling. We later learned that through another sponsor, and that's really helped us a lot.
Let's talk about that for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So walk me through the mechanics there. What specifically do you mean by that?
So even today, sometimes we'll take promote off the table. Sometimes we'll roll as much as we can into the next deal, like with the investors. And essentially, because the whole LLC has to do the 1031 and up leg. So once the money goes to the accommodator, once we close on the up leg, any dissenting investors that don't want to participate, usually there's like 1 to 10%, call it. Then we'll just swap them out of the LLC with a new investor that wants to participate in the new acquisition. And that's been invaluable for our investors, who now could compound without greedy Uncle Sam taking his long-term capital gain and recapture. And if you look over a long period of time, you're going to make way more multiples on your money doing that if you ever sell, rather than selling, paying all those taxes, have after-tax dollars and reinvesting.
And I think your ability to do that is sort of, to a certain extent, the result of having, first of all, cashed out on some of those earlier deals, right? And then also you guys get some fees. So you don't need to crystallize. It took us years to be able to
get to that point where we could start not needing those fees. Because every year it costs more and more to run our business, because we are lean, but it's still millions of dollars to run a business. So I always advise people, there's so many different routes. Like you could go raise a fund, you could do deal by deal, but yeah, keeping it leaner and meaner, it alleviates this, like from needing to do tons of deals and stuff. Yeah.
So you were kind of ahead of the curve, I would say, in terms of being in these secondary markets. I mean, obviously the rents and values have run up enormously since then. So good move. You have recently you did an expansion into mobile homes, which I think maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I've always had a dream. I mean, some people dream of being an actor. I've had a dream of owning mobile home parks. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I drive by, I'm hunting for them. They're sort of hidden. I see the white roofs when I'm driving on the map, and I'm like, oh my God, these things are like gold mines, man. So Josh had a former teammate. His brother was a top regional manager for Sun Communities. We poached him. We said, let's go buy mobile home parks. And we started with 1, and then 2, then 3. We bought 9 of them. Quickly realized it's just brutal to manage those. There's no good third-party management companies. They were really disparate. We had 3 in rural Pennsylvania, 2 in, like Foley, Alabama. Great market. We crushed it there, but like very dispersed and not in major MSAs. So we had to take management in-house. Then we realized we're not good managers and, didn't have the experience in the space. Then we sent it back to a apartment management company, which wasn't great. So we ended up exiting that. We crushed it on some of them. Some of our worst performing. Like we lucked out. We had cap rate compression, and some other people took them off our hands, thank God. And our lowest return was our 3-pack portfolio in Pennsylvania. We hit like an 8 or 9 IRR, and I'm always like, dude, if that's our worst deal, I'm going to be ecstatic.
Yeah, that's all right.
I never want to lose principal for people, and knock on wood, we've been doing that. But we were in the mobile home park space for a quick minute. My wife, Galena, who's somewhere in the audience, she spearheaded the buying of an RV park in Marina, which is next to Monterey, and we did very well there. But it was more of a development play. We bought a 65-site RV park. The previous owner owned it 10 years, wasn't able to expand it. She's fucking bulldog. She got through the city. She doesn't take no for an answer. We expanded the park, got 23 or 24 extra pads, and we sold it to Equity Lifestyle, Sam Zell's publicly traded REIT, and it was a big home run. And then we rolled it via 1031 into an apartment deal.
Nice. Okay, so that was an experiment, which it obviously wasn't a failure. I mean, you guys made money, but like a kind of a blind alley that you went down.
Yeah, maybe one day I'll be an LP in mobile home park fund, but you got to be really roll up your sleeves, be hands on with the parks, and
right.
be in managing them and be in it more. Yeah.
So talk about the genesis of your interest in self-storage, because that's another
another one of our investors is like one of the managing partners of a big self-storage kind of management company and ownership group, and I'm like, this business is gold, and he just kept telling me over the years, and I'm like, let's figure out how to get into this space. So we partnered with him on the first one, and it sort of fell in our lap. We had a broker friend of ours that was marketing a deal as a development site, but they wanted top dollar, but they weren't willing to allow a developer to tie it up for a long period of time, and there was a transition in the specific plan, so there's a lot of uncertainties on what could be built there. So we're like, okay, let's just underwrite it as a self-storage kind of project, and if it pencils, great. And it wasn't really marketed to the self-storage crowd. It was marketed to apartment people. So I think we were able to really get in there and steal it. I mean, rents were like 40% below market. It was local here in South Pasadena. There was a moratorium on new expansion there. It's very undersupplied. I think only like 3 or 4 square feet per person in the region. My self-storage guys, like the national average is like 8. And it'll make a great redevelopment site long term, but I don't even think we're going to do it. We're just crushing it as a self-storage. We don't have to worry about. I mean, we were able to raise rents to market rapidly, but it's not that many dollars. That's why we weren't changing people's lives. Like we had only 8% drop off, or even less, maybe 5% leave, and it's a great business. Yeah.
So let me ask. So that I've been incredibly risk averse about expanding both geographically and out of asset classes, and that's because I'm a nervous Nelly. Talk to us about that process for you and your partners to get comfortable. I mean, you had the audacity to go into these markets that honestly a lot of other people were doing it, and that worked out. And then you've gone into these other asset classes. Like, how did you get over that uncertainty? Like, what was there a process, or was it partners?
The process is bringing in someone that knows what the hell they're doing. I mean, we had a top regional manager for Sun, doing mobile home parks. On self-storage, we had a guy that had a lot of experience, and then we brought in another guy that had experience, and just let him really run with it and sort of take ownership of it and give them big pieces of the upside and just really be hands-on. And we would help with our brand, like raising capital and with just the back office, the accounting, just like all the things we provide. And I mean, we're trying to be entrepreneurial and zig when others zag and find opportunities, but we're still 90% apartments, and self-storage is a sort of a standalone. We're letting that keep growing and stuff at its own pace, but definitely always talking with the firm, where do we want to be and focus our time and energies on. There's no right or wrong. I mean, I love what you do, man. Like, you like what I do, I love what you do. I think the grass is always greener kind of thing. I mean, I'd love to build a huge portfolio locally in LA, and I think I'd love to be here because of supply constraints and areas that are, changing and rents going up, and I think LA long-term has a lot of legs. So I think there's no right or wrong. It just.
Oh no, I appreciate you saying that. No, I mean, I guess where I'm coming from, and I appreciate you explaining that, is it's another example of you kind of like not being greedy, like not kind of like demanding you and your partners to keep all the upside, but instead being willing to share it in exchange for people's expertise.
Yeah.
And that's something we've struggled with. If you go back and you read King of Capital, let's say, which is the Blackstone book, or the first Blackstone book, one of the recurring tropes there is that Schwartzman does the same thing, brings in people to try, and they, you don't hear about the failures. Like they went down some blind alleys also, which I think is part of like the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, I'm rereading that book. That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. For anyone who hasn't read that book, that's like I would say like among the most important ones for building a private equity business. Okay, so let's talk about today. You've got this very large portfolio. It seems like your investors are sort of like bought into owning the stuff long term. You have recently done some very large deals, so you're still capable of raising very large amounts of capital. But of course, like we're all dealing with, like the pricing in the market, and basically for every asset class is just extremely painful. So how are you thinking about things today?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you look at our sales versus buys, I think a year or two ago we did more sales than buys, but a lot of our buys are facilitated because we're selling, properties that have gone up in value like crazy, and we're in the process of sort of, the Gelt 1.0 was a lot of buildings that were 60s, 70s, 80s built, older buildings that were harder to hold long term, had a lot of major capital needs over the years that ate away at our CapEx account quicker than we thought. So now we're selling those and rolling into newer buildings, 2000 and newer, hopefully 2010 and newer, and the cap rates have really converge. They're very similar, like the older versus the newer. And I'd rather, upgrade the portfolio to a newer vintage, something that I could hold longer term. And we're even looking at new deals pretty much now to roll into.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going through.
You've been doing similar,
we've been doing the same thing. It's like if the market's not going to differentiate between a brand new building and a lipstick one from the 70s, and or between LA, let's say, or whatever, one of the other really good markets, and some tertiary markets that maybe aren't as good. Like, okay, take the better ones if the cap rates.
I'm going back to SoCal because the cap rates are similar, maybe even higher here than like Phoenix and Vegas, other markets that are historically very boom and bust. So they are growing faster now in terms of rent growth, but I think supply could come online really quick. I think it's a lower cost of living kind of area. I think there's not as much barriers to entry here. You're more insulated, and I'm trying to zig when others zag kind of thing. Again, I'm going newer. I'm going core. I bought in Long Beach. I bought in Anaheim. We're looking at another big deal in Long Beach. So we're just trying to buy more SoCal.
And how have you had those conversations with your LPs? I mean, obviously, many of them did extremely well with you. So that's, obviously they're going to trust you. On the other hand, I'm sure when you're showing them the pro formas, like they're objectively not as exciting as the stuff you're probably showing them.
They're definitely lower. We've always sort of under-promised, over-delivered. I think when we were showing deals over the years, the IRRs started at 15, now they're down to like 10 to 12 range. But it's sort of, I don't love IRRs because we usually show a 10-year projected hold period, not because we're maybe going to hold that long, but like because I want to show our investors this is patient capital, money you don't need in the next few years. And I don't show any like supplemental loans or refinances. Those are just kind of gravy stuff, which we've done a ton of times. But I think a lot of deals we've sold earlier and then exchanged, but then some deals I've recently bought that will probably, God willing, hold longer than the 10 years. But, I always say we're trying to be tax advantaged and we'll hopefully pull out all the principal over time. It takes time, and then you'll have no money in the deal and you'll own the golden goose laying the golden eggs. Why ever sell?
Why sell that? Yeah, no, obviously we're on the same page there. And I guess, yes, the IRRs have come down. But on the other hand, obviously everyone's swimming in cash right now, right? So there's still that push from LPs, like, look, I got more money coming in, and I'm looking across asset classes, and even though the deals you're showing me now aren't as good as the ones that maybe you were showing me 7 years ago, they're still better than the other stuff that I'm seeing out there. Yeah,
it's all relative. I mean, there's times to invest heavier and hoard cash. Now is a good time just to be cautious and cautiously optimistic. Find a good deal, and just it depends like how much leverage and
that's what I was going to ask
and what
you.
your investment most of our investors are trying to preserve wealth and grow it safely over time. You know, they've already made their capital, and we're just trying to really safely grow it. And we're not. I always say if you want to swing for the fences, we're not the right group, because I'm not max leveraging deals. Like, you know, I'm taking lower leverage than I could get, and I'd rather be safe than sorry. We're raising a lot of extra capital up front, so I'd never have to go back and do a capital call. During COVID, when collections dropped, we were in the negative on a couple buildings. We've never been in the negative, like in terms of where the rent didn't cover the expenses. We didn't have to do any capital calls because the account was flush with cash still. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we share similar philosophies in that respect. What are you doing in terms of leverage right now? Is it like on these buys, the stuff you're buying now, is it like 65% or something like that?
Yeah, in that range. So we've historically been long-term 10-year fixed rate debt, which has crushed us on anything we've sold because rates have gone down, and new buyers want to put new debt on. So we've eaten a lot of prepayment penalties. We're in the process of eating a $10 million prepayment penalty. Yeah, it hurts, but like, dude, I mean, the investors' cash on cash is going to shoot through the roof because like on this one loan, they're paying down principal. We're going to have a new loan that'll be 10 years full-term IO, and we're upgrading from a 70s building. We'll be buying, God willing, a new building. It's in a better area. So I think
worth it.
It's worth it, yeah.
Are you, in terms of the executions on the loans that you're doing, and we're getting into the weeds here, but like, obviously I'm fascinated by the multifamily stuff in particular. Agency debt, or are you?
I'd say 80, 90% agency. The last two deals, which are giving my partners a little heartburn, we're taking a little more risk. We're doing bridge because the agencies were only going to like 50 or 55%. And the bridge was offering up to 75. I think we took like 68 to 70 kind of range. But the rates start way lower, but they're floaters. And they come due in 3 years, but there's 2 one-year options to extend to like 5-year loans. So we're taking on a little more risk, but I feel globally our portfolio, we're so low leveraged, and I feel like safer taking that. I don't want to do too many of those, but we have done a few. But usually people that are maxing leverage and their incentive is just to go sell the building. But you never want to do that because, like, what if the time to sell the building is not a good time? You want to be able to hold longer term and wait through the cycle. You never want to be a forced seller, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. Preaching my language. So I guess I want to talk a bit more about the LP base for these things. Yeah. So you obviously have had a group of people that have been following you all along, but you also will take checks that are what size checks are we talking about?
So the stated like minimum in an offering memorandum says 100,000. It's to weed out, it has to be accredited investors only. We're not dealing with unaccredited. I always say to first timers, if they want to start with 50 or 75 to test the waters, start a relationship, fine. If you're younger and you're still accredited and I like you and you're not going to cause any problems, I'll let you in for 25,000 even. But yeah, our average check size is probably 150 to 175, but it's skewed because we have some bigger ones, 500,000, 750 million, once in a while 3 to 5 million, But we have a ton of investors in these deals. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are managing an enormous investor base.
Like 1,000 and
1,000 people.
Juniper Square is sponsoring this thing. IMS is dicking us around, man. Juniper Square. I'm going to be talking to you guys after this.
Actually in the same boat. On one hand, I want to say, I guess, that like it's kind of amazing when you think about it. Like 1,000 people, on the one hand, we'll talk about in a second, as a large group of investors, but on the other hand, that's actually to build a $1.8 billion portfolio with 1,000 relationships is one of the craziest things. I mean,
we raised like 650 million. So I guess if you do the math, what is that? Like, I mean, 600,000 per average investor or whatever. And
people are coming in it's obviously not all at once on one deal.
I always recommend put a little in every deal. And over time, their checks get bigger and bigger as they start making more money through their, I always say we're like an outsourced real estate arm for our investors, right? Like you could go out and buy a 5-10 unit building in LA, but that's going to cost you, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 a unit. You need to plunk down a lot of cash. Instead, just put a little bit in a lot of our deals, and you're giving up, some fees and some promotes and stuff, but you don't have to do shit. Literally, it's seamless. Passive and focus. You're going to make the most money focusing on your career or your business. That's where you should spend your time and energy,
So how do you internally, I mean, obviously, I think in the beginning you were probably managing those investor relations, but 1,000 people, there's a lot of K1s, a lot of distributions. How did you build up a team specifically to do that? Yeah,
we have a whole squad managing these investors. I mean, at the same time, I'm always the one that first onboards them and talks to them and really develops a relationship with them. They all have my cell phone, my email, I'm available 24 hours. Investors, we give them the white glove treatment. I mean, without investors, I wouldn't have a business, right? So we used to, literally in the beginning years, this is a good story, we used to charter planes and fly them out to the properties. We spent money we didn't have. We were pre-spending our AC fee to show them this is the building, this is what we're going to do with it. These were the bigger investors, obviously, but in real estate, you could see, touch, feel, and we were very hands-on with all the investors, and still to this day are. I mean, and we've grown through word of mouth. We started with one investor, and then our first investor was a guy that used to work for my dad like 20 years ago, and he moved out of the country, and he's like, I'm seeing what's going on in the U.S. Let me invest $100,000 or $200,000 into U.S. stuff. And then family friends started investing. Then they started telling friends. But over the last few years, I've been focusing on like broadening my network, and that's why I'm active on Twitter and LinkedIn and podcasts, and like just to get the awareness out that there are good sponsors like Moses, like myself, like other people in the audience that you could invest with that will be good fiduciary for you and grow your family's wealth over a long period of time. That's what my goal is, and theirs.
Love it, and I guess I want to emphasize yet again, and this, I'm sort of seeing a trend here. You've been willing over the whole course of the business to really focus on not being greedy, spending money that could have gone into your pocket. Instead, again, hiring a big investor relations team basically to make that a white glove experience.
Yeah, we have the software helping, but we have calls every day from people, and I try to help as much as I can, but then we have at least 4 or 5 people that are touching that, in that different
need
parts
to
of the
assign
process.
my interest.
Yeah, the accounting department helps them. We have investor relations department, the paralegal, everyone's touching them for different reasons. But yeah, I get furious when if something falls through the cracks, especially in this regard.
Yeah, our businesses don't exist without the trust of a bunch of people. I want to thank you very much for that. I know we got a little bit more in the weeds than maybe some interviews, but we're the audience here is people who are in this business and want to do this business, and hoping it was helpful.
Yeah, no, thanks, Moses, and feel free to contact me on my email, keith@geltinc.com. You know where I am on Twitter. DM's open. I'm happy to answer any questions. Specific questions are always good instead of general what to do. But I'm happy to help. So thanks for having me, man. This is great.
Fantastic. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah.